So you are 100% sure that your audience has a problem that you can help solve. That means it's time to create your online course. But where do you start and how do you even do that? Keep watching to find out. Hey everyone, welcome back and hello. If you're new here, my name is Janelle Allen and I help business owners to create and market online courses. Now, in my last video, I showed you how to validate your course idea and why that is so important. Well, once you validate, it's time to create. Yes, that was a rhyme. All right, enough of my corny jokes. In this video, I'm going to walk you through my exact process for creating an online course. And this process may be different from what you're used to because you're not just going to learn how to outline your course. I'm going to show you how to create a course that your audience actually wants because it's based on their needs. Now, this is a process I've used for myself as well as my clients. So let's dig in. Okay, first things first. Before we go any further, I have to say one thing. Do not create all of your course content before you sell the course. You absolutely want to do a pre-sale. I typically will pre-sell a live version or what I call a live pilot. Now, there's a lot of advantages to doing this, and it's kind of in two parts, right? Your pre-sale is advantageous because it allows you to truly validate that your audience wants your course, because the only true validation is when people put cold hard cash down, right? But the live pilot is also super helpful because it's going to help you discover what I call learning gaps. So what I do is I will only create about 30% of the content for my live pilot. And what that would allow you to do is it's going to give you a nice buffer. So you'll always be about 1 or 2 weeks ahead when you're teaching it live. You'll always have 1 or 2 weeks of content. So you don't have to rush. You are still going to be creating things as you go, but you'll have a little bit of a buffer. Now back to the learning gaps. Whenever you teach something, there's always things that you miss. There's always going to be considerations or constraints or something that you just didn't think about. It happens, especially your first time teaching something. I don't know about you, but I prefer to discover those in more of a low-key environment like a live pilot instead of creating all of my course content, recording all of the videos, writing out all of the content, creating all of the resources, and then realizing that people aren't getting something. So learning gaps can be anything from maybe people are getting stuck in a particular place and they need additional resources and you didn't think about that. Or maybe you're missing some topic that would really help people to move forward. Or maybe you've covered something that really isn't helpful. It can be all sorts of things. And the best way to discover those is by running a live pilot. Okay, just to recap, here are the 7 steps to create your online course using the live pilot method that I just discussed. Number 1, you're going to validate your online course idea. Number 2, you're going to identify your course goal. That is the desired transformation that your learners should be able to achieve after completing your course. Number 3, you're going to outline your course content. And number 4, you're going to create your sales page. Number 5, you are going to pre-sale your online course. Number 6, you're going to create that starter content that I mentioned earlier. And then number 7, you are going to run your live pilot. All right, so let's talk about these steps. We won't go through all of them, but we'll get through the majority of them. All right, so we already covered validating your course idea in my last video, so I'm not going to go back over that, but I do want to share some additional tips for you. Now, I love using this tool, which is TypeForm. I use this tool to help me gather survey responses. So if you're not familiar with TypeForm, definitely check it out. One of the things I love about TypeForm is it has all of these integrations. So I typically am going to export my survey results into either Airtable or Google Sheets, which I'm not sure where Google Sheets is, but it is somewhere in here. And I actually have survey responses. This is a very old survey that I used when I wasn't really that good at surveys, quite frankly, but it still gave me a ton of data. So I will typically export, like I said, the survey results into Google Sheets. And I like Google Sheets because it's a little bit easier for me to organize or identify the patterns. So I'll export it and then I will go through and I'm going to color code things that keep coming up, right? So each of these colors is tied to a specific topic. And that allows me to start putting all of this information into categories. So that is a really great way to look at your survey results and start to identify patterns. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you, this is my course Audience Decoded, and I'm going to show you exactly how I created the outline for this course next. So before I even outline, I will go from that survey results document that I just showed you, the spreadsheet, and then I kind of jot down just some things that I noticed. So here's one example of a document. I use a tool called Ulysses, which I really like it as a writing tool because it just gets out of the way. And it's not browser based, so I don't have any distractions when I'm writing. So what I've done here is I've basically organized this into just a few things I'm looking for, which is one, what is the problem that everyone is saying they need help with, right? And you could see that that was not being able to figure out what their audience wants. These are all pretty much saying the same thing. So that's the pattern that jumped out at me. And these are actual words from my audience. I just copied and pasted from the survey results. And then I'm also looking for constraints because when I'm creating my sales page, I want to, and even my email marketing copy, I want to address the things that are holding people back, right? The mindset stuff or the life stuff that they feel is really holding them back. And in this case, there were kind of three categories. That was not knowing how to market, feeling like they don't have time, and then mindset stuff, right? Some imposter syndrome and limiting beliefs. So this is just a quick document that I do beforehand. And what I'm looking for, I won't say primarily, but the first thing I'm looking for is the goal. What is the goal of the course? Because I'm going to take that course goal and I am going to use it to start my outline, right? So here I have this course goal. After completing this course, students will be able to figure out what their audience wants to buy. Now, you don't have to write your course goal this way. I have an instructional design background, so this is how I write things out, but you absolutely don't have to use the language that I use. The way that I do it is I'm going to outline, or I'm going to identify the course goal. I'm always starting there because I'm going to work backwards from that goal to figure out what the course needs to include to help students achieve this goal. And the things that I identify first and foremost are what are the things that they need to know or do? And those become my outcomes, right? So I'm looking at my course outcomes. You just delete this because it's actually outcomes. Determine if there's a market for their course topic. Apply different market research methods, right? They need to know how to do market research. They need to basically validate their course idea. Also, analyzing the data. That's a big one. So a lot of times I found that my students, I would show them how to validate, but when it came time to looking at the data, they didn't really understand how to pull out the language, what that data was telling them and what to do with it. So I need to show them how to analyze the data that they've just researched in order for them to be successful. right? In order for them to, again, hit this goal of figuring out what their audience wants to buy, I can't just tell them to go get some data. I got to show them what to do with that data. So that's number 3. And then creating solutions from that data, right? Solutions that solve real problems. So that's number 4. After you analyze the data, it's time to create a solution based on that. And then the last outcome here is to create audience-focused or audience-centered marketing, to actually use what you learned about your audience during research. So up here, right? Using that to create your marketing, which is the big part. So that's the first thing that I do. I identify the course goal and then the course outcomes. And this is already pre-done, right? But I'm just going to walk through the logic of all of this so you can see and just save some time instead of going through it live with you. So from there, I will identify the modules, right? So I've got my modules and I'm kind of looking at my outcomes and saying, okay, these typically my outcomes are going to be, they might be a module in and of themselves, or sometimes they'll flow into multiple modules. So I'm looking at these outcomes and then I'm trying to figure out, okay, what are these outcomes? How do they translate into modules? Well, the first thing that jumps out is I'm talking about how to find out if there's a market, right? I'm talking about market research. And this module is actually going to cover these first 2 outcomes. So it's going to cover how to find out if there is a market and how to do market research, right? That's what that module needs to cover. And then I jot down some specific objectives, which are just kind of taking those outcomes and breaking them down even further. These learning objectives ultimately are going to translate to lessons. So I'm going to have a lesson on how to research other people's audiences. I'm going to have a lesson on how to find places that your audience hangs out, or at the very least, a resource on that. I'm going to have a lesson on how to then take that research and what you're looking for, right? You're looking for problems, language, pain points, etc. And then I'm going to have a lesson on how to survey, the step-by-step process for surveying. And that's how to find out if there's a market. But that's not it. Your course isn't just information. You need to have something for your learners to do, because it's actually through doing that we learn. So what I always list out are, what are my assignments, right? If I look at these objectives, I think, what does my learner need to know and do to achieve these? Well, they're going to need to create a list of Hangouts. They're going to need to write their survey questions, create their survey, right? They're also going to need to schedule CDIs, which stands for Customer Discovery Interviews. So they're going to need to talk to some people in their audience. And that basically is the gist of their market research. I like to write out what are the wins. In other words, once they complete this module, what will they have achieved? What are they going to feel good about, right? I just think it's really important to keep that motivation going. So that's module 1. Then in module 2 of my outline, the next thing after you learn how to find out if there's a market and do that initial market research, then you're going to move into interviews. Now here, we scheduled the interviews, but you haven't actually learned how to do the interviews. That's an entire module in and of itself, because there's quite a few steps involved in breaking that down. So this is still about market research. So it still supports the first 2 outcomes that I outlined earlier. Market research, 1 and 2. All right. So in this one, learning objectives are, what are the things that they're going to need to know and do? They're going to need to schedule those customer development interviews. They're going to need to conduct those interviews. And they're going to need to then take that information and create a profile. So I'm doing something that's kind of scaffolding, which basically means they already started here. And so here they're building on to that step that they just took. So it helps them to create momentum, which is really important in an online course. So what is the thing that they need to do? which is outside of the interview, which they've already scheduled, right? Their assignment is going to be to create an audience profile. And the win here, again, this is just something I like to jot down, is that after this, they're going to know how to ask questions. They're going to know how to validate their online course idea. All right, so that's module 2. Let's move on to module 3. This one is all about how to interpret the data. What is it telling you? How do you interpret your research? And this supports the learning outcome number 3. So you can see how this is going, right? So analyzing the audience research data. And again, all of these are just based on me asking, if this is my goal, what are the things my learners need to know and do to accomplish that goal? So let's go back to module 3. Analyzing the data. Learning objectives that I identify. One more time, I'm an instructional designer. You don't have to get this granular. This is just how my brain works, right? So what are the things in this module that my learner needs to know and do to support this outcome? This is basically what's called backward design. They need to differentiate between what I call high value and low value problems, evaluate the data for patterns. So basically what I'm teaching them is how to look for problems. And also, you remember when I showed you the survey results and how I identify patterns? Well, I need to teach my learners how to do that. So that's what this one is all about, how to identify those patterns. And then how to analyze the customer language that comes up, right? What to do with that. And then determining the true problem. So sometimes you have to read between the lines a little bit and identify the true problem that people want to create. So for example, when we go back to this page, these are all of the things I jotted down, right? Unsure whether there's an audience, uncertain of what course to create, uncertainty, that's a word that I would have highlighted. This keeps coming up. I need to use this in my sales page. Who to market to, what topic to start with, not being able to figure out what people would want. This is the one that I realized is the true problem, right? People just don't know what their audience wants, which is why they feel uncertain about what to create. So essentially, that's what I'm helping my learners discover here, the true problem. And then determining the best solution to create. Once you've identified the problem, that's going to become your goal, solving that problem. And you determine, okay, what is the best solution to create? Is this going to be a course? What is that going to look like, etc. Now, the assignment here, again, is building on the previous module in that they already started their audience profile. So here they're just revising it based on all of the data that they just analyzed, right? So the wins that they're going to experience here are they're going to have insights that they just have never seen before, right? They never had so much clarity on the problems their audience is experiencing and what they're going to create to solve those problems and what are the words their audience is using. So that's what they're going to feel and be able to do when they complete this. All right. So the last two, I think there's 2 or 3 more. We'll do the last 2 here. Module 4. This one's called Turning Data into Dollars. And this supports outcome number 4. This is all about how to create solutions that solve those problems. And that should sound familiar because it's building off of the last thing that we identified as an objective for module 3. So what they're going to do is to create the solution, right? And the objectives for this module are they're going to list potential solutions for the problems that they identified, and then they're going to define or choose their offer. They're going to say, this is my offer, which is a really big step. So often people get stuck in the idea phase, or maybe they move forward and do some audience research and they get stuck in the analysis stage and they never actually say, this is what I'm going to create and make an offer. So that's what they're going to do in this module. Now, the assignment for this one that I created from there, once I said, okay, they're going to create an offer, then the assignment needs to support these objectives, right? Again, that backwards design method for your outline. So making a list of potential solutions, right? So we've got a problem solution worksheet in this module, and also an offer segment, right? An offer worksheet for them to define their offer. Now the win here, and this is intentionally kind of light to keep that momentum, because this stuff can be challenging, right? And so you don't want to bog your learners down. So I've intentionally kept it kind of short. Now the wins here are that they're going to have a list of products that they can create, and they're going to choose their offer, and it will be validated or pre-validated technically until they get money for it. So again, keeping that momentum. And that essentially wraps up how I would walk through the process that I would use to outline Audience Decoded. So now that you have your course outline, the next step you want to take is to create your sales page. And this is the sales page for the course that I just showed you my outline for, which is Audience Decoded. So you can already see that I am using my audience's language, right? Right here in the headline, create a course that your audience wants. These are not my words, these are my audience's words, right? And then I'm really sharing the story that I took based on my conversations, because I did interviews with my audience. So I'm sharing the story, and then I'm introducing the course here, right? So I'm saying introducing Audience Decoded. And then I break down what's in the course. So I've got the topics covered that we just went over. And then I'm also showing the features of the course, right? The video lessons, the assignments, the worksheets, etc. All of that good stuff. And then testimonials and the packaging and pricing. So this brings me to a really good stopping point, because before you can create your sales page, you need to know how to package and price your online course, which is exactly what we're going to talk about in the next video. I hope that was helpful. I know it was a lot, but I hope it was really helpful. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give me a thumbs up, and please share in the comments whether you're working on an online course. Have you already created an online course? What questions do you have about creating an online course? I would love to see what you're working on, and I will see you next time. Peace.